Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always. And today we are joined by Gemma Guerrero. Gemma is reshaping the landscape for women entrepreneurs and startups worldwide. With over 30 years in international business and market development experience, her expertise spans startups, strategic partnerships, fintech, and innovative technologies. She's co-founded tech ventures and served in leadership roles guiding financial restructuring and growth initiatives. Her deep understanding of global markets across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East empowers businesses to adapt, scale, and thrive. She's passionate about empowering entrepreneurs, providing strategic guidance, and driving investments that pave the way forward for ambitious startups. And I've asked her to join us here today to share her story and insights into international tech and the future of the startup ecosystem. So, Gemma, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Thank you, Daryl. This is such an exciting time for me to be discussing this, especially since I'm transitioning to a non-CEO role.
That is exciting. That's very exciting. New ventures, new futures, new experiences. But before we get into that, I want to know about your origin story. How did you even get into this? Do you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Were your parents entrepreneurs and you just took the torch and kept marching?
You know, that's actually interesting looking back. Actually, my dad has always been a corporate man. So I grew up, he worked for, he said he started with PG&E as a, he rose up the corporate ladder. And then towards, I guess, when we were in our teenage years, he started his own company, advertising, marketing, below the line, above the line. So he was very good at it. And I remember on weekends, he would take us to his office, especially with me. I'd go there and sit around and watch him talk to people. So that kind of got me interested. Actually, they wanted me to be, I think all parents, they say, I want you to be a doctor, I want you to be a lawyer, professional, right? But I didn't veer towards any of that. I just liked the fact that he was telling people what to do. Being the boss there, right? So that kind of made me get into the business aspect when I went to school. So that's pretty much, so I would say my dad was an entrepreneur, self-made man, able to send us to good schools, move to the US, gave us opportunity to really pursue what we want.
Wow. So what were one of your earliest entrepreneurial ventures? What was your first thrust into the business world?
Oh, okay. Well, it's really started in college. I went to school in Menlo College in Palo Alto because we live there, we moved there. And I would say on my third year, Menlo College is a very small international business school. That's where I really got my interest doing international business. So it's interesting. We're at the time in the 80s, we were just around 600 international students. And I made friends with a lot of the Europeans. In fact, we're called like a spoiled school because all the kids who go there pretty much, quite well to do, right? So what I did was some of my European friends would say, Jam, I need help with my thesis, my paperwork. So I would actually charge them for helping them do their work, edit their work. And then I got good at one of my favorite subject was money credit banking with, I remember Dr. Craig Medlin. And I loved that class and I did very well. So the lower years, the younger students would come to me because they heard about, how I did well in the exams. So they come to me for tutorial. So I charged them per hour. So that was part of my being entrepreneurial, so to speak, because I wanted money for the summer break,
Right.
So I did it that way. And
Yeah.
I did that for 2 years, my junior and senior year.
Wow. And so then what? What was your next venture?
And then, of course, I got a scholarship in Menlo on a full academic scholarship. So I was actually one of the younger students, a year below me, recommended me to work for his brother's company, which was a small trading company at the time in Palo Alto. So I also got an offer because every summer I'd work for a financial insurance company in San Francisco in the Bay Area. So I also got an offer there, but I wanted, at the time in the 90s, the world is being global.
Mhm.
International trade was booming, you know. It's different now. The perspective now is different, right? When you kind of compare it like 30 years ago.
Right.
But it was really about, you know, trading with international or different countries around the world. So I was very interested with that. And I did take up international business. So I did interview with this company in Palo Alto. It's called Chemex International. And I got hired based on the recommendation of the sister of the owner. And
Mm.
for 3 months, this was funny. For 3 months, I was just doing really secretarial work for the VP, for the vice president, the younger brother. It was family-owned company. So Chemtex is really trading commodities. We were trading in plastic resin. So we would buy the resin from countries that have petrochemical industries like
Mhm.
Mexico or Saudi Arabia. And the byproduct is called the plastic resin, where you use to make plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic straw. So we trade that as commodity, sell it all over the world. So I
Mm.
learned that trade. And after 3 months, I told my boss, I said, I just don't want to be your assistant. I want to get into the action. I want to develop my own account, sell, and go to the Southeast Asia, because I'm from there, and develop some market. And he said, Gemma, you're only 3 months here. You know, how can I understand it already? You know, at the time it was just telex trading. You see the commodities, you kind of hedge. So actually, I told him, if I said I make you a deal, if you send me out and I don't make any accounts for you, then I can be your secretary.
Right.
But I do well, then I want to be a sales account executive.
Right.
So he proposed it to his family, who was the board members, and they said, okay, let's give it a try. They sent me. You know, they sent me on a trip. It was a 10-day trip. I went to Singapore, Indonesia, Manila. So 3 days, 3 days, 3 days. So that was a total of 10 days. And I came back with 10 accounts. They couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. And no jet lag.
no, because you know, like you say, you're so like you have that frequency that you have to excel, you have to prove.
Yeah.
I was young, I was very energetic, I was excited given the responsibility. I thought it was a great opportunity, and I grabbed it, Daryl.
Yeah.
I went out there and proved myself, and that changed everything, because I treated the work, the company, as like me doing the business, and I want to succeed. So in turn, it reflected my efforts into giving back to the company. So
Mhm.
that's, I would say I was at the time 22, 23 years old.
Right. Love it. Great age for that sort of experience.
Yeah, and the people I'm meeting, they own factories, you
Mhm.
know, they own plastic manufacturing to make plastic bags in Singapore, Indonesia. I went to Palembang. I mean,
Mm.
at the time, my God, they couldn't believe there's a woman in front of them discussing how to, you know, buy this commodity at a certain price, because you kind of like, you hedge, you know, short, call it short or long. It was so exciting. And the first time I landed in Singapore, this guy refused to meet me when he saw me in the lobby of the hotel. His exact word, you have to be kidding me. I'm meeting with you. He's an older man. I mean, at the time, probably he was in his 50s. I said, wait a minute, I came all the way from California. At least say hi to me, you know?
Yeah.
So in the end, I kind of like, you know, made friends with, I'm still friends with some of them.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So then what? There was just sunshine and rainbows, and the heavens opened up and money rained down from the skies. And
Yeah, I would say, Daryl, really, America really is the land of opportunity. It's
Mm.
just for you to prove yourself, work hard, and of course you have to have, you know, talent and the capability, right? And education, obviously, that helps. But some, they don't, like, look at all the big tech giants, right? Some of them
Yeah.
they even finish. But my point is, though, if you do your thing the best way you can and you love it, which I did, you know, I mean, opportunities will fall into your, and also it's timing. I would say that
Mhm.
I was fortunate. There's luck as well. I was fortunate that this family believed in me and give me opportunity. And then after I did well, I would say 3 years in the chemical division, in the trading division. Uh, my boss and his partner invested in a 5-gallon bottling plant in Los Angeles. You know, the
Mhm.
5-gallon that you see now with the Wilkins here
Yep.
in Manila.
Yep.
Um, so they invested in that bottling plant to deliver water in 25-mile radius in LA, and it was profitable. So they thought, okay, there are 5-gallon bottling plants. They can also sell supplies like the caps, the bottles, the equipment. Their concept was trading. So they hired this gentleman from Chicago, was running a big company in the bottled water industry, and it didn't work after 1 year because the high package is quite experienced. So my boss looks out. I was in one of the cubicles, looks out and calls me, Gemma, come inside to my office. And he asked me, can you help me with the water business? So I was at that time, I would say 25, 26 years old. So he said, I need help. We let go of this gentleman and it seems like it's not working with him. So I'd like you to help me run the water business. So I said, well, okay, I want to help you, but I think you're doing it the wrong way. So he said, what do you mean? I said, you're doing the water business like you're trading plastic resin. It's not a commodity. It's accessories. And to do that, you need volume. Like we have volume in the commodity business, but this one, how many people would buy 1 million cups from you, and you're just a supplier? So I told him, I have a strategy, and my strategy is because you already have proof of concept in LA, you made money. I want to sell that idea overseas. So we tell the customer, let's say in Singapore, invest $1 million, $2 million. We bring in the equipment, the technology, we teach you how to do the business, and you can do an ROI in the water business after 2-3 years. He loved the idea. So it became an investment venture, and I ran it for 10 years. I grew the company. I sold a lot of, and then when we got very good at it, I participated in joint ventures, and that's how I met my husband. Yeah, and I left because I got married.
Got it.
So I learned all about the industry. I learned about investment. I learned how to structure deals, deal with banks, how to finance, use letter of credit, because I was involved in setting up that startup from the get-go.
Right.
And when I left, from just me personally, I did everything. I was doing the research, I was talking to the customer, I was talking to the suppliers, farming, setting a project with them, negotiating all the contracts, to a 16-man team. I had the shipping department, I had marketing people, I had the accounting to do. It was I loved it. I was traveling all the time. I was choosing the market where to set it up. I met important companies like PepsiCo in Mexico. I met Manny Pangilinan in Hong Kong, who at the time was only a managing director of First Pacific. Now he's like, the chairman of the largest conglomerate in the Philippines. So I did the Wilkins for them. They invested $5 million in whole new industry for bottled water. They called it Wilkins. I'm a supplier there. And then eventually he sold it when they invested in. He remembers that when I met him, not so far back. He said, yeah, that was a good business, Gemma, the water business, but they had to sell it because it was money making, and they needed to raise money when their investment in BGC kind of like during the 2008 crash. But that's it. And then I met my husband through the water business. He's Lebanese. Their family wanted to invest in the water project in Lebanon and to do a joint venture. But Lebanon in the 90s was very volatile. And I got close to the family. They're wonderful. And also for our company, I didn't want to put money there. And the war is like on, right? The bombing was on and off. So we decided, to call it, not to do it. And we just.
So you decided to marry him instead. You're like, listen, I can't give you water. I can't.
He decided to marry me instead.
Okay. So you're still closing deals.
Yeah, we closed the deal, and to much of my bosses,
they're dismayed.
He was quite upset because he said, okay, get married, but you don't have to quit. I said, well, I have to, because he's from the Middle East. I have to go there. And it's funny because after I quit, the whole industry like, why is she quitting? Everybody tried to pirate me and offer me better job, And but I said, no, I'm getting married now. Everyone's shocked. I kind of miss it because the suppliers, they became friends. We do trade shows all over the world. Yeah, but then I became a housewife for 10 years. I didn't work. I raised my two daughters as an entrepreneur and as a risk taker in
Mhm.
terms when you make an investment, it's not just a matter of having a great idea, but making sure you have, especially in technology where it's fast moving. And
Yep.
if you have a competitor like, because we talk to Google, Facebook, they all love the technology, Sony, um, even all this chip maker to put
Yep.
our technology, 3D technology in there. But well, I don't blame them. Their perspective is if you guys can do it, we can also do it. We have the resources, we have the money.
Right.
So just so it's a big voice network, Daryl, that was very difficult to penetrate. And
Mm.
got mixed reviews. Like some group from YouTube wanted the algorithm, some said no, we can do it. So in the end, we couldn't, we just couldn't penetrate, and we had to shift gears.
Right, 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 right. Well, of course, that happens in every entrepreneur's journey. You know,
Yeah.
wins and success. Nothing fails like success. I remember how hard I flopped. I'd helped the company do total over $3 million in under 8 months. And, I had a couple of other successes off the tail of that. So I thought I had a golden touch. I was like, people will line up to work with me. And then I moved
Yeah.
to East Asia. And when I first came here and I tested it out, I thought, wow, I was working overnights because that's where all my clients, right? I was overnight because that's the workday in North America. And then when I decided to move here, I thought, well, I'm so important. This is how now I laugh, but I was like, I'm not going to work overnights because I have enough of a waiting list and I have enough demand for my services that people will work with me on my schedule. Like I'm that important. And how fast I woke up to know you're not that important. You're great to work with, but if you're supposed to be working with the owner and the C-suite executives and driving the team, they don't want to meet you at dinner time.
Yeah.
That's not appealing to anybody. You can get by with that a couple of times, but that's not like a daily or weekly huddle time for a lot of people. And that was my biggest eye opener. So, and I've talked with a few other friends that, you have a bunch of success, you start feeling like you got golden fingers. You're like, oh, anything I touch. And then you bite something too bigger than you can chew. And I had a friend, they almost, I think he went 10 million in debt. It was the same thing. He used to work with Fortune. He's been a guest on our show a few times. I'm not going to say his name because it's his story to tell, but they they used to get hired by all the Fortune 100s to help them penetrate new markets. And they were writing $1 million contracts because their success rate was so high. And then they launched this conference center. It's supposed to be a big international conference center and they sunk a ton of money into that. And then 9/11 happened and
Yeah.
all it all disappeared. And all of a sudden they were just upside down without a paddle, down river without a paddle, or whoever that saying goes. So um life, man. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making now? Learning what
Uh,
you've learned and seeing what you've seen and working with startups.
yes. I think, to be honest, it's in the Philippines, it's the lack of funding.
Hmm.
I think that's the biggest, I would say, concern that any startup, and depends on what they want to do, right? Depends on what I mean, technology, you have to have deep pockets. Because like you said, with some of your friends, we put in my husband and I, our group, we have investors, we had angel investors, but majority, we put in the money. And we were going to exit by selling the company to a company in San Diego. I won't say the company, but COVID happened in
Mhm.
2020, and things change. Then the VC, they dried up, even companies wanting to expand into the new technology, that the doors were all closed. So we had to unfortunately pack up,
Yep.
but
Yep.
uh, that was really a huge lesson, that if you get into technology and you find something, because my husband, he's an engineer, but he
Mhm.
doesn't, but he knows, he was pretty much the chief architect for how he wanted to do the software. And I think the biggest mistake is to fund it ourselves when it's highly competitive. So that's what I tell companies who want to ask for software advice. Well, not me, but with me and my husband, I would say that make sure that you really know what you're doing, first of all, and that it's innovative, because right now technology is so fast moving and you need a lot of money,
Right.
which I find very difficult for other people to penetrate, because who heads it? It's an all boys network. It's those people with money who gets all these great ideas, right? And it's a batting average for them. Sometimes they'll invest in a company, 10 companies, and only one will succeed, right? But the nine who applied for funding, maybe the one to succeed, right? So, and in the Philippines, I mean, also it's the nature of the beast. You can't really fault the investor. They want to make sure that this business will succeed, right? And will make money for their investors as well. So it's like a chicken or the egg kind of thing.
What do you think are some of those important skills or behaviors for success?
All right. Well, first of all, I mean, you have to lead. You have to be able to motivate people. And because you can't do it alone, right? You need people around you who are very passionate and committed as you are. And that with my husband, he is, I saw the leadership in him. He's not the type who would like scream and shout to fire up people. And I know I kind of like veer towards that, right? Because when I was working, in America, when you work, you're not competent, okay, out you go, right? So that kind of changed but at the same time, you have to balance that, especially in the Philippines where uh
Yes,
time,
especially in the
time,
Philippines.
yeah, time is not critical to them. It's mañana, mañana, there's no rush, right? And I'm kind of impatient with that, right? So
Yeah.
success really, you can be smart, you can have innovative product, but if you overanalyze and analysis paralysis, yeah, the
Yeah.
competition ahead and copy you. So, but also I think you allow people to make mistakes, but make sure that the mistakes are not repeated 2, 3 times, because then
Mm,
so you
mm,
you always have to build consensus. That's
mm.
important, because I've been in boards where I was the chairman and the board president, where you have all these capable board members and they argue, and you just have to build a consensus where you get into, and that for me is I think a skill.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You don't want to antagonize. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect in building
No, of
consensus.
course, of course, of course.
You have your biases, but you have to try to do that, to build consensus so you
Well,
can.
you really have to communicate with people and you have to break through. It's
Yes,
it's almost it's almost like an evolutionary process where you have to, and part of it is your skill as a communicator. But assuming that you're a competent communicator, it's breaking through. It's almost like a business plan. You don't want to show your business plan to someone, have them be like, yeah, try it. You want them to you want to fail on paper fast and
yes,
over as much as you can. And it's almost that process. When you talk about building consensus, that's what I'm hearing. Is it's almost like you've got these people that are board members for a reason. They have expertise in something, and it has to make sense from their particular point of view. Um, in order to do the best you can to guarantee success. I think that's an important thing. You mentioned the difference in culture. Culture is such an important part. I was reading about the theory about why certain cultures are like that, the manana, and they said, like, I'm Canadian, and in Canada you have 4 months to grow your food to survive for another 8 months, and if you don't plant on time, you starve and
yeah,
you die. But in the
yes.
Philippines, I didn't get it done today. I'll do it tomorrow. There's no winter, right? So you lose
Yeah.
that sense of urgency. You're like, whatever. I didn't plant the corn today, but I got banana trees and coconut tree, everything. Because for those that don't know, in the Philippines, there's one season. It's just hot, and then there's a wet part of the hot season. Like that's really all it is. There's no winter. There's no spring. It's just hot and sunny every day. And then sometimes it rains for a while, and then that's really it. And then if you plant something, it just grows. So there's no sense of urgency because it's like
Sense.
whatever.
Yeah. It's not to say that the Filipinos are,
No, they're not lazy. No, 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 no.
they're not lazy. They're so
No.
hardworking. I mean, we
So
have before.
hardworking.
So yeah, they have. We have employees who travel 2 hours just to come to the
Yeah,
office in
each
PC.
day. Yeah, yeah.
So it's really about working smart, not just about working hard, it's about
Yeah.
working smart. And I think to the team that we worked with, the Filipinos we worked with, they've now gone on to bigger, better companies because they
Yep.
learned about technology. They work for Globe, they work for this hotel group for software. So we were very happy they were placed in a good companies, right? And they've learned about being resourceful, taking the initiative, which really I think I have to say is also very important. Like when they develop algorithms or write codes, they shouldn't stop. They have to. My husband taught them, okay, because he's not a coder, so for him, he's looking at from the point of view of
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you can't do that way, so why don't you revise doing it this way? And it, I mean, really, we have pioneering ideas on technology, and now you have AI, right? So
Right.
we're stepping away from technology. We're going low tech. We're going with the food business now.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I planted 800 dragon fruit. We're building AI tools. I got an agency. I've got an app, and then I've got the dragon fruit, and we're selling self-sufficient housing. In the United States, the offer is no money down, beautiful self-sufficient home you can build in 90 days, pay off in 3 to 5 years, and be somewhat food, power, water self-sufficient. Comes with solar panels. You got to buy. It's partially prefabricated. You have to assemble it on site, buy some things locally like cisterns and that. You have to pour a cement slab, but you assemble it all on site. You put it together. You got solar panels. You can store a month amount of supply of water. The garden's hooked up to your washing machine in the bathroom, shower, and sink. So you water your garden by taking a shower to grow some food. It's got like a foot of earth over it, and it's got a geothermal cooling system. So there's no electricity, no moving parts, but you can pull in if you. Oh yeah, we're going to be building one in Laguna in about a month. We're just waiting for the financing to come through on the bank.
We have to, and because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the transport,
Right.
we don't have trains, we don't have real buses that work, and so everyone is in the city. It's so crowded, so we have to build housing outside, and
Yep.
of course we need infrastructure for the roads.
Right.
And
Right.
I believe
Yep.
in education.
Right. Oh, education is huge. AI is going to be a major breakthrough for that. It's going to be interesting to see how things go. What do you foresee? I mean, your fingers on the pulse and you're in the startup scene. What do you see happening sort of over the next 5-10 years? You've worked across multiple countries. You know about the OFW movement. You know about the BPO industry in the Philippines. What do you see things sort of 5 years from now? Is the Philippines still going to be a major outsourcing center of the world? Do you think a lot of this is going to be replaced by AI? What are your thoughts? What do you?
Yeah, we've been talking about that as since I would say AI taking over since 7 years ago when we were in the tech industry, and we had, because we would do conferences on that for technology in the Philippines. We'd have guests from Silicon Valley, and really they did warn about AI taking over the call centers. But the more complicated business processing, I mean, not totally, but it will, because like Elon Musk is saying, if you follow Elon Musk, what he's thinking about AI and his contemporaries, they're saying that it is going to be so intelligent that AI, that you have to use it wisely, cautiously, because it can be 20% beneficial and 80% destructive. So
Right.
that's scary to me, right?
Yep.
So it has to be used by people with some some ethics and standards on how to, automate the industry to make it better, but at the same time train people to be able to use it so it's not redundant, right?
Right.
So it
Right.
will increase the skill set of the person. And in the Philippines, hopefully, we have, the leadership in the government and in Congress to be able to do that really prudently and establish synergies with companies who will really do well for helping the Filipinos, especially the industry. Because, I mean, I don't want to say it, but there's a lot of corruption still, that
Right.
sometimes the cost of transformational technology or infrastructure becomes so costly that it doesn't filter down in terms
Yep.
of the benefits, right? Because
Right.
it's too,
Right. Yep.
right? Everyone's fingers on the pie. They all want to make money. It's a 6-year term. I mean, that's that's an issue.
Well, I think that's part of where we're at, because you mentioned about AI. Like, if I create a seek and destroy robot, it'll just run until it's done. And that's where it becomes incredibly, and the same thing, if I created a bot that's to manipulate everybody, right? Psychologically, it'll just run and run and run. It's like an assembly line machine. It'll just keep running and running and running and running as long as it has a power input and no one's hit the stop button. But part of where we're at now, I think that's where we're having a lot of the pushback, and there's kind of like the great awakening. You're seeing this sort of with different, as COVID was a wake up call for a lot of people, because things are becoming so powerful now. The leverage that corruption has can massively detriment our species. And so I think that's part of where we're going through right now, is some of these sort of banking institutions and political institutions, the corruption and the attempts to censor and control, it's a parasite on our development as a species, and in a really dangerous way that inhibits progress and growth. I mean, a free market system, how it's supposed to work is that I want to get a massage and I'm going to vote with my dollars. And out of all the options that I have available, I'm going to spend my money and give my vote to the best one. But
Yeah.
with politics, you have master planners that they make a decision on what's best for the people, and with a pen stroke, it gets rolled out to millions of people, and it steamrolls anybody that it doesn't fit very well, and there's no localization, and there's no, you know what I mean? Like, it's all that is lost with the master planning of governments. We need government, but there's also no review of the laws and legislations. In my hometown in Canada, it is still illegal to park your horse downtown between the hours of 3 and 7 p.m. You can get a ticket for that. But no one has parked a horse downtown in my hometown for 300 years. And so every year there's new legislation and new laws, and it just lays on to where at this point the people in power can just open up a book and almost like picking a spot on a globe, just, oh, we're going to get this guy with this, and then come
Yes.
after you in some way, shape, or form. And it's completely bastardized the actual intent of the law or the legislation from when. And so this is where now we're like, we have these archaic systems. We have to almost analyze them. And it's not a pretty process. It's debate, it's friction, it's trial and error. But we got to go through and purge this sort of stuff and get lean and sort of mean again and focus on outcomes that we really want. Because like you say, the corruption slows things down. It prevents benefits from getting to the people. And there's real threats on the horizon potentially that we have to address, and we just don't have time for that stuff. And so,
yeah, it's well, we're gonna have midterm election here in this country, and I mean, not for anything, look at the candidates who are running. They're actors, they're dynasty family, which, I mean, they may have good intention. I'm not saying they're all corrupt, but still,
it's
yeah, right. And the implementation, when they have a good idea, the implementation gets so conflated that by the end, nothing is happened, and a lot of money changes hands, whatever, and still to no benefit, right? To no benefit of the people.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be the shiniest of two turds. I always think of this anytime I hear of an election. I'm like, out of whatever the country is, like Canada, for example, we got 40 million people, and I'm like, really, out of 40 million human beings, these are the 4 or 5 individuals that are the best of us? Like, is this the part of the problem? Is that the people that are the best fit for power and authority tend to not seek it, and that's what makes them the best ones for it. It's because they don't seek power, they don't seek authority, they won't abuse it, because they don't, it's like fire that clings to the wood that gives us life. There's no thirst for it, right? But the people that are clamoring for it, they're not the ones that you want to have it, because they're psychopaths and narcissistics and sociopaths, but they're the ones that are after it because they're so inclined. So it's a weird era that we're entering. And I just think things like this, long form conversations with people, long form interviews, unedited, uncensored content, tools like AI, if we can get them uncensored, I think that education, like you mentioned, is really powerful. And that's kind of where we'll hopefully have sort of a grassroots effect up, I hope, in the near future.
I hope so. I mean, education, because in this country, it's all about who's popular. And population is quite poor, that, those not educated, they go by they go with what they watch on TV or on their social media, right? I mean, interestingly enough, the Filipinos are very good. tech savvy. They know how to use the internet. They know how
Yep.
to use, digital payments, their phone. I mean, but most really just they idolize as actors and movie stars, and they think they can run the country the same way.
Yep.
So we need education.
Yeah, that's a true point. You mentioned that a lot of people, they turn on their television, they open their television
Yes.
and they channel their programming. I'm going to open my television. I'm going to choose a channel to get my programming. And I just consume my programming. And then I go walk around to my friends and I regurgitate how I've been programmed. And that's a big wake up call. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Hollywood was the
I was
type of
going to say
tree.
the same thing.
Hollywood was the type of tree that wizards used to make their wands from. And
Yes.
and entertainment means to entrance someone. So we're hearing about all this sort of stuff now, with all the stuff that's in the US, the United States, and the opening of the JFK files and Project Mockingbird and all this stuff. They understand how impressionable humans are. And this is part of like the awakening process, I think, that as we learn this stuff, we start going, and if the news, here's the kind of shocking thing is, if the news has been this bad and this fake, what more of history?
Yeah.
How much of our history is edited,
Kind of
redacted,
curated.
The winners write the history books, right? So you never hear about the other point of view. So it's going to be a crazy interesting, I think, next 10, 20 years into the future. So so you're going,
Even so, go ahead.
no, what were we going to say? It's your interview.
I was saying during the election, when we were following the election in the US, even like Google at the time, with their social media, they curate it in a way that you don't hear news about Trump. It's always
Right.
the other, right?
Right.
I mean, it's very manipulative, right?
Yep. Right.
Unless you're kind of like, you wanna, which is interesting. Like when my daughters are educated in UK, and there's one discussion that they told me about the climate change. So, at dinner table, we talk about everything politics, and there's one thing that they told me that they learned from school, obviously, like, and this is also a problem with the education, the schools now, the institutions, right? So they're talking about climate change. But I said, okay, I said, Mom, you don't believe in climate change? I said, yes and no, I said, but there are groups now that they're trying to really make you believe that the world is going to end, the earth is going to disintegrate, so I said you have to kind of like manage that viewpoint, that you just don't soak in everything you learn in the classroom or what your professors, because like anyone else, they have biases. So I just did that. I didn't argue with them. I just told them, just look at other viewpoints. You look at it, discuss, just like COVID, like how we were led to believe that it has to be mandatory and that you won't get COVID once you get the vaccine. And there's really, the side effects are very minimal, blah, blah, blah.
Oops.
Right?
Yeah.
I only had 2 shots. I didn't really have the 3rd or 4th.
Right.
And I had to do it because I had to travel. Otherwise, I couldn't travel to see my daughters, right?
Yeah. No, it's wild. The climate change one is interesting. It depends. The planet is warming depends on when you start your measurement from, because you can almost pick any arbitrary point in time and say the planet is warming or cooling. And actually, when we had the most amount of life on Earth was the Cambrian explosion. It was something like 10 degrees hotter. So this whole heating thing, and maybe the climate is warming. Okay. But the planet itself produces and naturally recycles something like, my numbers are rough estimates, but it's something like 3,000, we'll say 3,100 gigatons of carbon just from animals farting and trees and all that sort of stuff, right? And humans produce 40 gigatons. So the planet's already producing and recycling 3,060 gigatons of this stuff, and maybe we produce 40,000. And so it's not necessarily the red herring or that people necessarily think it is on that example. And the other part is, like, I'm from Canada. You can't live in Canada as a natural being. Like some of this comes from the philosophy of Gaia Earth, Mother Earth, meaning that the earth provides. And if we just live in harmony with nature, then everything would be Eden on earth. No, it wouldn't be, because the small space of the earth that we can live in is basically like the Philippines, the equator. Like you can just near the equator, that's it. Like the pioneers that went to Canada, they landed there in the spring and summer, and then they died in the winter because winter came and killed them. So we actually, the environment is a really hostile place, and we had to develop technology in order to survive. We had developed technology to have agriculture in order to plant plants and survive. So it's a bit of a yin yang thing where, yes, we are symbiotic with the planet, but at the same time, we wouldn't survive without technology. And the answer is not to revert back to living like the Amish. It's about developing new technology.
Or the cave, living in the caves with no technology at all. Who would do that now, right?
Right.
I mean, they want to save the planet because this technology is detrimental to Earth, then go move inside a cave and live on it.
Well, and the other part is everyone wants to complain about this on their iPad and iPhone, which was made with third world cheap labor and minerals and cobalt mines. Like everyone wants to be Zen and yoga while they're sipping their Starbucks and hanging out in Bali. But who spent a day working in the field? Like if I drop you off in the woods, with a lighter and a knife, how long till you come back with your own iPhone that you made from raw materials from the forest? Like some of this stuff is nonsense. So we do need to develop new technology, but this also comes back to your corruption thing, right? Where there is technology that's being repressed. There's technology that invested, the whole fintech thing. You were in fintech. The whole fintech thing has been sat on because the central banking elite don't want to lose control of the finance of the world, because that is the power center for everything. You fund both sides of the war. Like people don't realize how profitable war is. First, you print the money, you make the money on the interest that the taxpayers pay back. You buy the weapons, so you make the money on that. All the soldiers get killed. The government, who absorbs all those assets from those lost soldiers? There's claims that some countries have declared war between each other or started battles simply to clear out debt in lives. One country owes another country, and they make a backroom deal to have a battle until the debt can be paid, and they just send people to their slaughter. And when enough assets have been claimed by both sides and the other side repaid, the battle ends.
Yeah, totally. War is money.
It clears the ledger. It clears I was in Vietnam during COVID, and I was so shocked because I was in Da Nang, and after there's this whole seafront that's all these 5-star, the Hyatts, the Regent, all these major, really nice resorts. And after a year and a half of no tourism, the borders closed. The government just comes in and just, thank you, we're going to take all this now. And the politicians sell it to their friends and their relatives and and so that's where, again, this comes into this area we're in right now. We're like, how does the world really work, and what's happening, and what happens when we have these, what happens when every human on the planet has like an infinity tool, like an AI bot that I can talk to, and we'll program a software tool that can put, if I have a fleet of 50 drones that I can make, and they're whatever, it costs me 500 pesos a drone, and I can have 50 of them, and they all have facial recognition. They can all fly themselves, and they all have a remote controlled piece of C4 explosive on them. Like, what does that do? Right? Like all of a sudden, that's just it's an interesting future that we're headed towards. And there, Peter Thiel has said this great thing about, I'm going to shut up because it's supposed to be your interview, but Peter Thiel has said this great thing that I really valued. He said, people talk about angels and demons. Well, a sufficiently advanced civilization with technology that could open up a wormhole, right? And like teleport somewhere, as an example, whether that's, like Star Trek travel, warp speed, all that stuff. I could send a nuclear bomb anywhere on this planet so fast, so instantaneous, there's no defense to it. There's no defense. If I felt destructive, I could instantly destroy the whole planet and no one could defend from it. So either you have to become so altruistic, you would be like an angel, or you have to have such draconian controls on every person other than the one central command. It would seem like a devil. It would be like a devil. Like punishment was so severe, and the control, and it was so draconian, and no freedom and no free thought. So it's almost like at one point who do we want to, which side do we want to be on? Right.
Yeah.
And that's, anyways,
No,
diverging.
totally. That's why you need leaders who have a mindset that there shouldn't be any war
Yep.
and that you can work with everybody.
Yep.
It's a matter of, getting a compromise, consensus.
Yeah. So in working in so many different countries and so many internationally, are there any tips for anyone that you would have? If people are looking at, okay, now with technology, you can hop on a Zoom call with someone from one country to another, you can hop on a plane, go anywhere else, having to deal with different tax code, different legislations, different cultures. Are there any kind of tips that you think would be really helpful if you could talk to yourself at the beginning of your journey to
Oh
navigate?
yeah, well, I learned that early on when I was doing trading. When you go visit a country, you have to do your due diligence, you research the country. Even though I'm from Southeast Asia, there are nuances, right? Cultural norms that's different for Singapore, Indonesia, and how to do business. I mean, especially now, you can research that. So that's important. Know where you're going, what is the market like, how are the people like, and what are the things that you should avoid and kind of do in a respectful way. So that's one. But also now, I think it's a matter of educating yourself in terms of the economic factors and the government, the leadership in that country, because that's the only way if, like, we're trying to bring in a technology here for the transportation for the LTOs for traffic violation, and we saw the potential, everything, but when we check the regulatory framework and the government mandate on it, we found out that there is a temporary restraining order on another company that did this. It's stuck in court. So, it's a good thing. So we had to tell our principals in Europe that we don't think we can do it in Manila. So, I mean, the government play a huge factor when you go want to do a business in another country, not just, right? And you have to look for good partners locally who will be, of course, like if you come here, you look at the big families, who have deep pockets, right? And so that's pretty much what I would suggest for anyone coming to any country.
Yeah.
And that's what I did when I was working early on in 20s and 30s. So know who are the big families running the show, especially in countries in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia. They're normally, you can count in your fingers how many families are running the whole country, in addition to who's the government or the leadership in place.
And I guess it probably includes knowing, especially now since it's
Can
so
you hear
easy.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I would say also perhaps looking into a little bit of the history of how
Hello?
that came to be as well. That might be, I think perhaps that's a really good tip. Gemma, this has been so interesting for you to share all your stories and your journeys, and I've appreciated so much. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Okay, come again? I
Oh,
couldn't hear you properly.
you're good. I said, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Well, what I'm doing now,
Yeah, what are
what
you
I
doing now?
do.
What are you doing now?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we are looking. I'm really not as active in business, but when there's a project, so my husband and I, we work together. So if he wants my perspective with the startup, so he's working on quite a few startups right now, locals, Filipinos who are entrepreneurial, and so I'm kind of helping out on the side, yeah, giving my 2 cents worth. So, but really now I'm just trying to enjoy life, get a sabbatical, and see who I'm looking at consulting later on, do a consulting gig, just help out,
Mhm.
especially women entrepreneurs.
And if somebody wants to contact you, if they're interested, if they want to know more about your story, if they want to get your eyes on their project or their startup, what are some of the best ways for them to get in touch?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Gemma Guerrero. And because like even right now with fintech, I have ideas for where I can help because I do have a network in the fintech industry, in the fintech
Mhm.
space. And so I have meetings lined up, where I can create synergies. Because
Mhm.
right now, I think all industries are competitive, especially in the tech space. So it's really difficult for startups to succeed unless you collaborate and you have, of
Mhm.
course, something to offer, right? So it's good if you can really get a head start on finding out what is the space you're in, how competitive it is, and what you're offering. So that way
Mhm.
can network and try to leverage my relationship and my experience on how to advise people, right?
Mm, So for those that are interested, you can find her on LinkedIn. Just do a search for Gemma Guerrero. That is Gemma, Gemma Guerrero, Guerrero. Take a look. You know you've got her. You can also do a search for Gemma, sorry, and just pay two. You might find her as well with that. Gemma, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your insights, your stories, your history. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you,
It
knowing you.
went fast, Carol.
Yes, it went by so fast. And
Yes.
thank you so much for sharing with us. And I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a pleasure meeting you. I think it's very interesting to keep in touch, and I shall do that if you don't mind.
Of course, of course.